Great. Well, why don't we get started? Welcome. I'm so glad to have you all joining us tonight. My name is Michelle Rapp, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Career Strategy in the Office of Alumni Relations. And I'm so excited and grateful to have our 5 wonderful speakers tonight. They are members of the Young Alumni Advisory Board, and I will put in a plug that you can apply to be a member of the Young Alumni Advisory Board up until February 28th, and there's information on the alumni website for that, and it applies to alums that are 10 years out from graduation. So that's something to consider as well. And again, we're just taking a poll here of your top 2 preferred topics. So you can feel free to answer that. And why don't we start? I want to say that you can post questions to the chat throughout the session, and our panelists will be answering those. And we want to keep it as a conversation tonight. A lot of participation. So I'm going to have the panelists start by just telling us some highlights of their career that would give us some relevant background tonight. I'm going to have Alan start us, and then Alan, you could pass it to the next person.
Yeah, definitely. So, Alan Sen, graduated with a business and economics degree back in 2017. So currently a finance manager with Johnson & Johnson. I've been with them since I was a co-op. So, had a really good time with them and have gone up, continued my career on with them. Currently based out in California, so representing the West Coast tonight. I'd say, previous background, I also did investment, co-op banking, opportunity that I found, wasn't the right fit for me. And that's kind of where I jumped into corporate finance and supported a variety of different of our business units and functions. So looking forward to speak with you all. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Lucy.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucy Liu. I graduated DMSB in 2018, degree in finance, accounting, and economics. Currently, I am at CIBC as an associate in their debt capital markets group, focused specifically on sovereigns, agencies, supranationals. So think the World Bank, for instance, if they were to issue debt. I joined CIBC around a year ago, and prior to that, I was at Scotiabank in a very similar role in debt capital markets, doing corporate debt instead. I did 3 co-ops. First one was in audit, and then sort of pivoted over to the investment banking side. I will pass it on to Alki.
Thanks, Lucy. So after I graduated from Northeastern with a civil engineering major in 2014, I worked on a capital infrastructure project, and then I went to pursue my master's degree also in civil engineering. So a lot of technical degrees there. And then I relocated to New York about 6 years ago to join Hill International, which is a company that provides program, project, construction management services, basically for clients in various sectors, and they're undertaking major construction projects on a global scale. So I've been with them for quite some time. I started as a project engineer, and then I was promoted to an assistant project manager. But because our clients in a way dictate the projects depending on different job assignments, I've been having different, in a way, job titles based on the client's needs. And in a way, I manage all aspects of construction from initiation till completion. It's more of the business side of civil engineering. And yeah, that's all I had as an intro on my end. I'll pass it on now to Rachel.
All right, thank you, Alki. Rachel Morfitt here. Rachel repaid during undergrad. So I graduated DeMoore McKim School of Business in 2015, and I took a focus on management, information systems, and marketing. So since graduation, I've taken my co-ops and continued into the sports industry and entertainment industry, where I currently am with a company focused mostly on events and tourism called City Experiences. And mainly been within the realm of sales and marketing, business operations, and analytics throughout my career. So some of my key call outs that kind of guide some of the conversations that we're going to be having on this call is how I took what I was interested in, but also what I was good at, and found the intersection. And I say that because I was a bit of a Goldilocks when it came to finalizing my majors and concentrations. And so finding that journey for myself, whether it was with your majors or within your career, and also not doubting myself that I could be in, such, for me personally, a technical role that I thought maybe I need a computer science background, but I was and am fully capable. So I'm kind of battling that imposter syndrome from my perspective. And then also the power of connections. So I say that to just give voice to my journey as well. I did one co-op at ESPN as part of my sports tenure. And while applying for a full-time job, I applied to maybe 10 different positions for full-time, didn't even get an interview. And that was really discouraging. It took one email to one person that I met for like a week while I was on co-op, and they recommended me, interviewed, got the position, and I stayed there for 4 years or so. So just kind of the power of putting yourself out there and having the confidence to do so, making those connections, but also believing in yourself and the journey you're on. So that's some of the things I hope to touch on later in this call as well. And to Mohammed, saving best for last.
That's what I was gonna say.
Exactly.
Thank you for this introduction. Greetings all, and it would in the line with what Michelle said earlier, to keep it friendly and cozy, it would make me really happy to see some familiar faces from the audience. So if you dare, I ask that you turn your camera on. Don't worry, I'll wait. Who's gonna be the brave soul? The first one. We only need one person. One person. Who's gonna do that?
Right here.
Wait, where?
Oh, I turned it on. It's Jack. How are you, Mohammed?
Hey, Jack, how are you? Oh, please, let me see your face. It's good to see you.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Can you see me? I'm
No,
not
not yet.
Maybe that's why.
Not yet.
We were told when we logged in that whatever settings are there, our videos wouldn't be active.
Oh, Michelle.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Oh, Michelle. That's why I'm seeing a lot of names,
I had never
but no
seen-
face.
I had never seen that before, and then I was like, oh, okay, because I thought my video was on, and then something popped up that the settings are you won't see ours, we'll only see yours or something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
we will take care of that.
We are seeing yours.
And as Michelle is figuring that piece out, I will go ahead with my introduction. I am Mohammed Kante, and I am many things to many people, depending on the day and the time. I will tell you the appropriate one. And typically, this is to say that I'm a slasher, right? A slasher, people would say I'm an entrepreneur slash engineer slash, and then the slash goes on. But I think what's relevant to this conversation is two main roles, right? An entrepreneur and a corporate design thinker. And as an entrepreneur, I have started 3 startups and 1 nonprofit, 2 for-profits. I'll be glad to explore those. I'm mentioning this because I want, for those of you who might be considering doing startup while being in corporate America, I could address that. In addition to that, as a person in corporate America, I graduated from Northeastern University with an electrical engineering degree, and I've eventually switched to program management because the novelty of engineering wore off and the new job. And also I realized that it's much cooler to be a social nerd. And so I just started with that journey, and I've been doing that since. So right now I'm doing operational excellence, which means that people would have ideas and I would say, hey, by the way, these are the processes and the resources that we need to do that best. Without that, there will be chaos. Without that, we wouldn't be able to properly manage and release our new products at Dell Technologies. So that's where I'm gonna stop for now. Hopefully I was able to provide some context, and if you have questions, I will be here. And before I turn the mic over to Michelle, did we figure out the video thing?
So if anyone knows what to do, how to fix that.
Can you make me a host? please?
Yeah.
Mohammed, maybe we should have people respond in the chat, like where they're joining from.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yes, that's a
Just
good
get
one.
some, because
What
Lord
would
knows
people say?
technology in
Yeah.
the mix is,
Actually,
Who
if
knows?
you would like us to turn your video on, I think with Kiana, I just tried that. Bernice, if anyone wants to indicate that they'd like their camera turned on. Oh, maybe someone fixed that. Yes.
Oh.
If anyone
Okay,
wants,
that's it. I think it's been changed, right? I see.
here you
Oh,
go.
I
Oh,
see
yeah.
Kiana. Hey, good to
All
see
right.
you. Oh, I see Jose. Is it Jose or Jose? I see Jack. Jose, good to see you. Megana. Hey, Jenna, thank you. Which other brave soul is going to turn on their camera? If you're having a bad hair day, it's okay. I didn't do mine either.
and if you're not able to turn your camera on because of things that I did, please put your, oh, Bernice got us out of focus mode. So people should have the option. So
Perfect. And I see people coming in from Newton,
Mhm.
from Rochester, from New Jersey, Boston, Virgin Island. Good gobbly goob. You don't need to brag. And we have Boston, South Shore, Massachusetts, Boston, Jamaica Plain. So we have a lot of local folks and some folks in the
Mohammed,
far-
were you a radio host in your past life? Is that, because you're doing great.
Yeah.
You're doing actually great.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
I was
So
gonna say, I think he's the official announcer for all the Yab events.
there's that. Maybe I think the next startup is going to
Yeah.
be within the entertainment realm. And
Well,
I
Hey, I
can't
take
wait.
that as a compliment. Thank you.
No,
Not
it
because-
is.
well, our panel here has many talents and great diversity of experiences and advice and information to share. So I'm going to move us into seeing these results here from the poll. So I've got our top 4 topics. So I'm going to get started with just that very common life challenge of determining what's next. I think sometimes you're plugging along and you just hit that point. We used to call it, should I stay or should I go? You know, what do I do next? Do I stay in this job? Do I go back to school? Do I change completely what I'm doing? So that's a big one. And it can happen a lot, like sort of maybe you change majors a bunch of times, you get out, and then it can, sometimes you think you're on a path and you change your mind. So I'm going to start with Alki and ask you, Alki, something that stands out as an important decision that you made in your career path, and how did you decide?
That's actually interesting because in the past, I would never really think that I could have this significant moment that would actually dictate how my career progressed over the years. But then the more you progress, the more you kind of keep going back into those significant moments. And for me, it was a bit more right before I was thinking about relocating for this job opportunity. I was thinking, do I actually make that first step? Do I go? Do I not go? Do I want to stay in my comfort zone? Am I actually the best fit for this job? You have all these questions that are coming through your head that you're just starting your career, you're not 100% sure about like stepping on your feet. So I keep going back into that moment that I was thinking, what do I actually do? And I just said, embrace it and go for it and give it 3 months. And I said, I'm going to do what I have to do for those 3 months. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't work, so be it. At least I attempted to go for something different and I stepped off my comfort zone. So I tend to think about that moment quite a lot, simply because I was over dinner having a discussion with my father and I was just crying, sobbing, not knowing what to do. And it's a bit of an ironic moment because when you think about it years later, you're just laughing that something like that at some point in your life was so significant that you were really in that crossroad of what do you actually do. So I think as we progress professionally, we tend to have these moments more and more. And I think it's good to have these questions. Am I actually getting too comfortable in my current position? Do I need to keep pushing forward? Do I need to actually brand myself a different way if I want to make a transition down the line? Do I have the tools and the skill set that I need if I want to become a manager down the line? Or is my background more scope specific and technical, and maybe I need to go back to school to actually just get back in the realm of continuing my education in a different domain? So I think it is important to just have these moments that you feel a little bit lost and try and take them with a grain of salt and think that, okay, it's an uncomfortable situation right now, but it's good to be in an uncomfortable situation because at some point you're going to pivot into something different. You're going to grow out of this and you're just going to be more focused into something that is more aligned with the future version of yourself. So to basically reel all that back in, I think it's very important to be uncomfortable overall with how you're growing and actually ask yourself these questions. Where do I want to go? Where do I see myself, not in 5 or 10 years, but overall in a position that you would be happy to grow professionally, and to try and be an agile learner that, okay, you are where you are now, how do you get to the next step?
Elke, one of the things that stood out to me in your story was how you were with your father during one portion of that, because I think one of the key things you're pointing out too is it's nice to bounce that idea off like trusted people, whether it's your dad or like a corporate mentor or a spouse that maybe knows you really well. Because to your point, like maybe it's clear from the outside too. Maybe you were really unhappy in your position and you needed to change, but you don't want to be uncomfortable. To your point. So I think that's a really interesting call out that you have with how you're with someone that you trusted also in some of that like processing. And I think that's a really special call out too.
Yeah, and the support system is.
And after time passed by, that was a moment with my father, but I remember later on in my career, that transition to my manager, to my mentor, clearly not sobbing in front of them, but being in that uncomfortable position to have that discussion with someone that sure is your manager, but can also be a mentor that really understands all the technicalities of your role and how you can grow from one position to the next. Sorry, Alan, you were trying
No, I was just gonna say, I think I'm glad you brought up the mentors in the office as well. It's the support system. It's so key, right? Of sometimes you need that extra push to kind of help push you to make that decision, because it can be so scary. And they're the ones too that they can be like your cheerleaders, because oftentimes too, I think if when we want to make the next step, it's, you know, you're also kind of comfortable. It's that uncomfortableness of like, you know, like, am I good enough? Of that uncertainty of, you need people who like, you know, obviously you want to believe in yourself, but sometimes you just need to hear it from someone else of like, you are good enough, like you are worthy of whatever you're looking at, and they can give you the extra push to be able to get you to make that jump.
Yeah, I guess I can chime in too. I definitely agree with Alki's story. I think for me, having recently moved jobs within the past year, one of the things that I realized, especially talking to my mentors and close friends, was that I was very comfortable in my role. I knew that sort of because everyone would ask me questions and I sort of knew the answers to everything. And that's when you know you're like, oh, maybe I've been at this institution for quite a long time because I have all this institutional knowledge. And then it just became like a realization that like I can continue to progress at the institution, or is there a pivot that I want to make? Like, what am I seeking out in my new role if I were to make it? And I think a lot of things I was seeking out was I still want to stay in this broader industry, but I wanted maybe more support mentorship wise, or that I wanted to be sort of at a different section instead of being at corporates on the government side. So like when you sort of decide what if you want to stay or if you want to go, there's also the consideration that like, hey, like I like this in my current job and I can find something that has what I currently enjoy and something else to it as well.
And it's truly about that fine tuning, because a lot of people go to college and they're not sure what they even want to major. They're not sure what they want to do right after college. And then even if you work in an industry that you are happy for that period, you still like some elements, you want to change some elements. And it's what Lucy just said. It's about fine tuning it and then going somewhere else that has this partial kind of like common denominator as the previous job, but it actually moves more and more towards where you see yourself being happy in a professional setting down the line.
If you realized that you needed to add a new skill set in some form, how did you do that? And that may include the question of returning to school in some way too. Maybe Mohammed, I know you've done a lot of educational advancement. You could start us off.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, and I like anecdotes and analogies. So I'm going to use the analogy of, because I think Lucy just mentioned the word pivot, right? If you do decide it's time to move, and then now we're going to call it a pivot. And for those of you who understand basketball, pivoting is when you keep one foot planted, and then before you decide where to pass the ball or where to go next. So one foot keeps moving back and forth, and then one keeps planted as you move around with the ball before you decide what's next. So that pivoting point is very important, because that moment you could decide, as I'm going to echo what everybody said, right? You could network, right? So sending email within, somebody loves basketball analogy, you could network within the company that you're in. You could go on LinkedIn, because the world is truly flat. You could reach out to Bill Gates today. He might not respond, but you have that access, right? The point is, when you reach out to folks, ask them, hey, by the way, I would like to grab 15 minutes of your time, and it would be good to just pick your brain about what you do. So that's when you're deciding what to do. As you determine what to do, now you got to determine where I am and what I'm trying to be. What are the gaps, right? So it could be educational advancement. It could be maybe you need to shadow somebody to acquire the skills required for you to move into that role. Whatever that is, you got to be willing to do that, because after you determine, then now you got to, after you determine where to move, you got to determine the gap. And after the gap, now you start executing on whatever that is. If it's school, then you go to school. So I'm one of those folks. I really love learning. I tend to refer to myself as a philosopher, not in the term of I know how to, think deeply, but in really somebody who loves knowledge. And as such, I still am against going to school for the sake of going to school, right? So meaning that if you determine my next role is the corner office at this company, whatever that is, where are you today realistically, and what's required for you to make that, and then that gap, what's required for you to do that? Maybe it's an MBA, right? Maybe it's another master's program, or maybe it's just you shadowing somebody for the next foreseeable future, 6 months, 3 months, right? There's no one size fit all. That's why I gave the framework of pivot. Identify where you want to be, do some networking, try to make sure that it is indeed what it is, and then identify the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and then execute.
Mohammed, another example of identifying the gap I've done recently, even where I've looked at job postings that I'm like, oh, that job, ooh, maybe that. And I've looked at the requirements of that posting. I was like, okay, like, yes, not yet. And so that was almost like my growth plan on a piece of paper for me, for what I was, to your point, targeting and maybe pivoting towards. But then that was just another forum that I could look at for guidance on identifying what the gap could be.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you're not ready, it's great to actually motivate you to know towards what goals you need to start making some changes. And there's so many wonderful free resources nowadays that even if you just want to Google something about, it's more related to investment banking, but let's say you can have all these models and websites for free that you can learn how to do the basic real estate financial modeling that is required for that first interview if you want to transition towards that industry. Sure, if people have the time and have the resources available, they can gladly go back to school, but there's so many resources out there. So I think the most important thing is to just have that drive to realize what do you need to do to fill those gaps.
Yeah, no, okay, I think that the drive is really key. So I think I did the same thing, Rachel, that you were mentioning a couple of weeks ago, of like, I wonder what it would take to get to the next level. I think, I think that's great. But in the drive side, Alki, too, of like, looking at, leaders that you really look up to, or people who are in that position as well. Of, obviously there's the tactical skills that, that are on paper, but there may be other skill sets that you find in leaders that you admire, of like, oh, well, like, I really like how they handled that, or like, that's something that I want to develop, of being able to learn, how to manage that. I think, maybe kind of pivoting to the question in the chat of like, that's a great opportunity for you to then be able to shadow someone, I would say, in a company, in terms of if there's someone that you look up to, it's probably a little easier to network with them, reach out, set up a one-on-one. But then, if we're thinking about outside the company, I think, I'll put a little plug for a Northeastern platform that we have that we'll talk a little bit more at the end, called NewsSource, where it's, it's an alumni directory that has, anyone who's gone to Northeastern, you have the ability to sign up for it. You can see where, what their current industry is, what their work experience is, and all of that. I'd say, you'll be able to see who's willing to kind of reach out and, have a conversation with you. You can learn more from them. But you can do the same thing on LinkedIn, where you oftentimes see, you have mutual connections, or maybe they're a third connection, but someone who can kind of put you in touch with them. Of people love to talk about themselves. All the panelists that we have here, we're here, because Michelle reached out and you're like, you want to talk about yourself? And we said, yes, who doesn't like to talk about themselves, right? Like, the odds are, they may not be available immediately, but they'll find time to be able to talk to you and kind of help you learn more about that industry that you maybe want to break into.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Going back to Mohan's point, I love the idea of like that one size doesn't fit all. Like you can have your goal like, oh, I want to do my grad school, I want to do my MBA or whatever. And a lot of it is incremental steps to get there. So like for me, I do have a vision eventually to go back to grad school. And for me, it's mostly about like a pivot in terms of like industry that I want to be focused on. And really starting right now, I can start moving the needle towards that area. So for instance, Alki mentioned doing classes online. Like there's so much free resources out there for you to sort of get the foundation level and see, number one, is this something I'm interested in? And number two, like, what are the skill sets I need? And then on top of that, I guess going back to the question about sort of shadowing, a lot of companies, or if you do enough research, there's companies that have like professional fellowship. So essentially while you're working, you can also intern or do a fellowship at select companies. And there's like specific programs, they're like a few months long typically. And that's like an opportunity for you to still doing what you're currently doing your 9-to-5 job, but at the same time, if you have the bandwidth and the capacity to sort of explore your additional interests and whether that's the right fit for you.
I will say,
oh, sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good.
Oh, speaking basically following what Lucy just said, there's also a lot of professional groups that you can join, different chapters in your region. And a lot of the times in this type of settings, you can have people that are in the same industry or even in different industry. It could be something that is, for instance, there's like a mentorship program that it could be about individuals in the financial sector. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same type of role that you're doing, but you can also interact with people that are much more senior than you, that they work in different companies, and they can inspire you to actually transition into something different within your industry, but in a different role. So that is also another way that you could potentially shadow some people that are maybe your role models, or like they can become potential mentors, but it's a way that you could also start transitioning step by step.
Yeah, the fine print for the professional fellowships and some of the, shadowing perhaps other groups within your own company or whatever, maybe depending on the visibility of it. Speaking from experience, talk to your boss before you do it so they hear it from you. And the reason I say that is I had a natural curiosity about another group, which is an amazing thing, I think. And my boss took it as, I wanted out. Like I wanted out from this group, I wanted out from this team, and that wasn't my intention. I just want to learn more. So I think just getting in front of the conversation too is, good way to hedge your bets to make sure that your intention of it is pure. You're learning, you want to know more about the business, and maybe they have a recommendation even for having someone you can meet with. So sometimes it's just nice to include them at least in that process, so it's not a surprise and taken with, a different way.
Well, given the ambitiousness of many people in their careers, but certainly Northeastern folks, we have the topic of advancing in your career. And I wanted to ask Alan. So Alan, you've made a lot of moves within your company and you also became a manager. So what were some success factors there or steps that you took?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, to kind of back up first, I think it's, a lot of times in terms of looking for the next opportunity, some of it also comes down to, being in the right place and at the right time of, it's there's always, other factors that are kind of back in the background. And going off that too, like you just can't compare yourself against others. You don't know what's kind of going on in their lives. It's really easy to compare against your peers of, so-and-so got this promotion, at this time, like, why didn't I? Like, you don't know what that full story is, and you're just going to drive yourself crazy if you focus in on that. If you really need to focus on yourself. It's, it's okay to benchmark against other people, but, for me, it's really been focused on, what do I want to achieve with an X amount of, years, and how do I use my mentors to kind of leverage that? Kind of to the point that we talked about earlier with when Elke was kind of sharing her personal story of like, using the support system has been really key of helping me kind of figure out what specifically I wanted to kind of aspire to. There were a lot of different roles that I was looking at, internally of, I think this could be a good fit. And then I had a mentor say, it sounds really good on paper, but like, do you really know what that role is? Like, does that really make sense? And it's been kind of leveraging them to kind of help me narrow down what that scope is. And, knowing that, I eventually did want to get to manager, also being very open of, manager is something that I see myself getting in X amount of years. What skill set do I need to work on to get to that point? So oftentimes, there are people who may want to, get to that level, or whatever, dream role, if you will. But if you don't vocalize that, no one knows, and people, won't be able to help you as much. It's a lot harder for you to get to that role if you don't speak up. Like Rachel mentioned, it just took one email for someone to kind of help her get through the door, and you have to use that support system to get there. But I think it's a lot of investing in yourself and being open, of what your aspirations are. That's really the only way that you're able to really kind of move forward and, have those one-on-ones, use that support system to make sure as you're going through the process, you have people to support you in the ups and downs, but also can give you that outside opinion of, is that truly the right role for you?
So I really like what Alan said, but before I comment on that, I want to give a shout out to Jose. Everybody turn off their camera except him. Somebody please validate that man's parking on his way out. Thank you. So what Alan said earlier, it's true, right? Do not do it because somebody else did it, especially in this day and age with social media where everybody put their success on it. Sometimes it's very easy to see, oh, Alan got promoted, he put it on his LinkedIn. I'm very happy to announce that I'm going to start a new role as a man. I'm sitting there, I'm like, what have I been doing with my life, right? So then, again, I'm going to say this primarily to myself, and hopefully you can benefit from it. You got to be real with your goal and your objectives. The analogy that I would use on this one is make sure that you know which wall your ladder is against. Meaning, if your ladder is against the outside wall, it doesn't matter how fast you climb it, you're going to go outside. If it's against the indoor wall, however fast you cannot go outside, you're just going to go indoor. And the reason why I'm putting that analogy out there, I made a conscious decision early in my career that I will not be climbing a corporate ladder, that I'm not going to be in corporate. I'm still there because it provided a steady income before I get to where I want to be. Now, if I see Alan become the VP and I feel like I should be there, I should remind myself that my ladder is against a different wall than his. It's not like I'm not climbing. I am climbing, but we are climbing toward a different destination. And I just wanted to emphasize that piece when, Alan just mentioned that, because it's very, very important for you to not self-pity and then find yourself in oh my God, my life sucks. Maybe, but not really, right? Not because of Alan, right? Not because of Alan's promotion or whatever the case is. You just gotta bring it back to yourself and your reality and the decisions you've made as far as your career is concerned.
No, Mohammed, I love that because it's something else that I've seen within our organization too, of really respected leaders who they've also consciously turned down promotions and made lateral moves to the exact point of they had different aspirations, they had different goals, and it's so important that you know what your aspirations are and you hold yourself to that, because it's just not healthy to kind of always be like, wow, like Mohammed got this role, or Rachel got this, why didn't I get that? If you stay true to kind of what your aspirations are, you're going to be so much more successful longer term.
And Alan, to your point, also that lateral move for someone could be, I want a better work-life balance. I love the corporate environment. It has provided X, Y, and Z, and I love the drive and everything, but it's not sustainable. And working so many more hours every day for how many years, it starts having a toll. So it could just be another wall, transitioning from the corporate wall or from the wall that maybe that was the wall that you were climbing several years ago to a different wall. And maybe sometimes you just need to shift that ladder to that different wall.
It kind of all circles back into something that even Lucy said for the what's next conversation of like, what are your non-negotiables? Like, is your ladder in New York City, or is your ladder back, home in the Midwest where I currently am? Is it a pay minimum, or is it a title that you must have? Like, putting those things, I literally put them on a sheet of paper, because for me now, and I'm remote, I'm not in office, and it's not that was non-negotiable, but I didn't want to go to office 5 days a week in my current work functionality. So having that as just another piece of your ladder and understanding, if you are looking to shift ladders. I love analogies, so Mohammed, I'm all in. And I think that's just another piece of this too, kind of having that reflection point of saying, okay, what if I was doing this job for $30,000 less? Would I be okay with that? If it was maybe a higher title, but like a different company name, like just those type of prompts to yourself to understand what are you going to be like, no. And then having that can just kind of helps you on your journey too.
I think something, Rachel, that kind of came to my mind is, as you're talking about titles too, it's also level setting that, titles mean different things at different places. So, obviously, if there's a certain title you want, that's totally fine. But, I could be, I'm a manager currently at J&J. I could go somewhere else and, I could become the CFO just because but it's a really small mom and pop type store of, I think, as you're also like, if, you are benchmarking yourself against other people or, looking at, other people, that's where it's also important to, really know what your worth is, because it's you may not be comparing apples to apples without realizing. So it's it's definitely something else to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And also to not get disincentivized just because everyone likes to post about their job transitions, and we live in a world of social media, and it should be measured a little bit differently, that in a way you're happy for them and you're trying to not let that affect how you feel about your professional growth, but actually focus on what is a priority for you. Is it choosing benefits over a salary? Is it the location? And try and be, once you have identified that, try and be open with your managers as well. You don't necessarily need to be 100% transparent about all of your potential decisions down the line, but at least it is so much more beneficial if you do have that discussion with people that you trust, with your managers, and to have the discussion about, okay, why do you want that next step? What do you want to accomplish in the future? Not necessarily, I want a promotion. Where is my promotion? Why haven't I received a title change if I see people that are on a similar level as I am in another company that they've already transitioned to a different job title? It's about trying to separate yourself from all that comparison scheme and have that discussion. Ideally, I want to become a manager, or I want to transition into that department. What are the steps that I need to start making today so that in 6 months or in a year we can have that discussion again?
Okay, I really like that in terms of like, how do you make your goals more attainable versus, to your point, like social media, everyone talks, most, I guess, 9 times out of 10, everyone talks about, the really great successes of, I got my promotion or whatever. I can tell you, as I was looking for my promotion, I also got turned down by so many people, but you don't hear about that. And when you're reading through those posts, it's really hard to put behind, like, that person also had a lot of lows that you may not know about, of, balancing, those expectations of, obviously, really excited for that person, but you also don't know the journey that they went through in order to get that. It may not have always been, all the highs that you see on social media.
Yeah, and let me just follow on that, and then before I get to Jack's comment, one thing that I like to say to at least young professionals that I mentor within Dell Technology is that no one has gotten the corner office because people like them, right? You actually have to work hard. Like, people don't just wake you up out of sleep and say, hey, by the way, you want a corner office? Here it is for you. No, because people are actually putting so much work to go there that you being the bare minimum guy, you're not going to be noticed. One, and it's not going to be given to you because you have a pretty face, right? So, you got to be intentional, and you got to be willing to do the work required. I'm sure, Jack, Alan, you've done so much work to get to that managerial position, and I'm sure it's well deserved, because I'm sure it's not given to you because your name is Alan. On the other side of it, I've seen Jack mentioning that their generation is given, well, they have the ability to just zigzag to any career. And then I'm not that much older than you, so sometimes I used to refer to them like them Gen G's, them Gen G's, and then I realized that I'm one of them. So the point is, my father's generation, they would go to school and then they would gather a lot of knowledge, call it a suitcase, and they would walk through life and then start using the content of that suitcase throughout their career until they're retired. Now we are walking around, we don't even know what a suitcase means, and then it hit me to be a YouTuber. I could learn how to be a YouTuber. It hit me to be a programmer. I could go to General Assembly, take a 6-month course, and then not necessarily call myself as an engineer, but still be as efficient and do a good job to be a software engineer. The key is you can shift and change, because data, I was gonna go back to the big data conversation, but let's wheel it back to keep it basic. You have access today, access to generate content and access to read content all over, regardless of what it is, free and paid. That is what gives you the ability, theoretically, to be anything you want to be. Of course, you got to be willing to do the work.
Yeah, no, I think the access, I think that's a huge difference that we have. And I think, reading through the comments, Rich, to your point too, of, I think a lot of it's, the framing that we have this day. Like, framing is key, and part of it's probably because of all, social media and everything. Everyone wants to kind of put on that online persona of why it's, maybe more clear. But I would say, I see a lot of people, and it's part of, J&J is also an older, institution of. It's really common that we see people jump between departments, where I've seen leaders going from finance to marketing to operations, come back to finance. So I think it definitely still happens. It's just it's the access is there so that people will continue to do that, and just a matter of how people want to frame that I guess externally based on that persona they want to create.
And to that persona, I think it's also the push about personal branding a lot today. That no matter what we do, we are not just a software engineer or a doctor. We have all these other interests and aspects that we are passionate about, but it's about selling our brand image in a very marketable way, that a lot of the times that could also be an extra stress about people actually setting up this public version of themselves, when in reality maybe they don't want to do it. Maybe they want to be a bit more focused in just their career path and not necessarily to do all these extra things. But it is part also of today's current job market, because maybe someone that doesn't put their best foot forward in a resume or in an interview or in a social profile maybe is not going to get the job versus another person, even if they have the same qualifications or a similar background or similar work experience. It's something we need to take it into consideration nowadays.
So promoting yourself and confidence gets me so
Yeah.
excited.
Go for it.
So as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and I know that was another topic we were looking to cover here. So, I mean, first and foremost, kudos to everyone on this call, everyone that joined, everyone that had to hop off. Like, you were showing up because you want to learn something. You want to have a community. You want to do all these things. So first and foremost, like if you were feeling like you had a bad day or anything like that, like pat yourself on the back, like you're doing more than a lot of people right now. So that's just another thing, finding those little wins and nuggets. Like sometimes you don't give it to yourself, but here I am giving it to you, like you're doing it. And to Alki's point about the personal branding aspect, I'm so intrigued by all this, like the psychology behind it, how we perceive ourselves, perceive others, how the workforce is incorporated to all of it. One of my favorite nuggets I've gotten from a career coach is when people ask you, what do you do? And like, how do you answer that? Whether you're fresh out of college, whether you're, a CEO, what do you do? And her advice to me, and what I'm passing along to you guys, is to do it in a 3-prong approach and have 2 professional nuggets and 1 personal. So the example of this would be, so Rachel, like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm sales and marketing operations professional, a data analytics project manager, translator, and a master crafter. And people always, that personal gets people's attention. Like people are expecting you to be like, oh, I'm an analyst, I'm, business, whatever. I'm, even a musician. I don't know what it is. Like what discipline you're in. They probably already kind of have a sense of you, maybe, just making that assumption. 9 out of 10 times people ask me about the master crafting. And that forms a natural connection, that forms that, and we'll get to the rest of the other 2 points that I mentioned, but that makes you memorable. And that is half the battle. So think about that's my homework for you guys. What's your 2 professional, 1 personal? When someone says, who are you? What do you do? So that's one thing, the personal branding, and also having that ready kind of gives you that confidence too, of like, who am I? I don't know. So that's one aspect. And then we've touched on this a decent amount already with the learning aspect, but for imposter syndrome, it's going to be there. I mean, I know CEOs that are like, I don't know what I'm doing. And whether they said that blatantly or, I've heard from the grapevine, they've, hinted at it. So one of the things for me personally, and I've seen this also work for others, is the concept to keep learning, because we're such a society that celebrates results, and that's natural and that's within, what we do. But we need to celebrate progress also. And I think in learning, that can give us our tangible, like, yes, go you, and your end result that you're dreaming of will come in, maybe in a different way or different time zone, or not time zone, time frame that you think of. But to be able to be like, you know what, this weekend I'm going to do an Excel certificate, cool, and or whatever bite-sized things you can get, because sometimes you do question, am I worthy? Am I ready? Maybe not. Who knows? Maybe you'll get the opportunity anyways. But at least on the way, you're trying and you're building. And that alone can give you the confidence that I'm evolving. Whether it's for you, whether it's for your sales pitch of why you. So those are kind of like my super excited little like plugs of that. And I'll also leave you with the homework of 2 professional, 1 personal. But then there's 2 books that I think would be intriguing too, if you want to learn more about this concept. One is called, I have them here for show and tell, Brag Better. And this is just all about like, it's okay to talk about what you're good at. It's okay to like sell your, like, I did this really well today, or like, this project went great, and how to kind of get rid of that stigma of like, you're bragging. Like, no, you're just celebrating and some of the different accomplishments you or your team have. And then the second one is Reach Out, which you're all kind of doing right now by showing up. And this was written by a Northeastern alum. And it's just the power of reaching out to people, whether it's strangers or people and it gives you formats, templates, how to do it. But you never know what like one little like, hey, I'm curious about what you do. That could lead to a job. You don't know. And so it's just the power of keeping connections going. And that can also help with your confidence and just knowing you have a network growing with you.
Yeah,
I
Rachel,
will
love
get off my soapbox.
no, Rachel, I love the idea of celebrating, your wins. It's something that I actually do at the end of every year. Not even if I'm trying to change jobs, but like I'll look back and think about like what have I done this year? Like what are the things to look back of? It's really easy to kind of just go through a year and not realize that you may have accomplished a lot of things. Like if we think about career-wise, it's also a really good time to update your resume. So you actually know like what you've accomplished over periods of time. But celebrating wins, I think it's great because I think oftentimes we do a lot of things, and we were actually talking about this at our last YAB meeting of sometimes we're like, oh, we actually haven't done that much, but it's all about perspective of what you consider an accomplishment. Of everyone has something to speak for, and it's so important to recognize that, and that's really what will keep your mental health going in terms of moving forward to whatever that next goal is.
I wanted to ask what role, one, you may be involved with some professional groups and played a role there, but I'm also thinking about you're on this Young Alumni Advisory Board, things like that. I know, Mohammed, some of you are doing things in nonprofits and in the community or having side hustles, but I'm thinking about the networking piece, like how have some of these activities that don't seem directly professional had an impact?
Oh my God. So I mentioned earlier that I graduated from, with a bachelor's in electrical engineering, and then a couple of years later I turned into program manager. Now, the backstory in that is the fact that I started a nonprofit to bring educational opportunity to youth in Africa. At the time, I didn't know it was going to bring another like notoriety and then a lot of awards that I received, because if I did, I would have started earlier. But it was truly out of passion, and that is what gave me, first of all, a look into what it is like to be a program manager, and also gives me the skill set for me to make it a transferable one in corporate America, to say, hey, by the way, I've done XYZ and I've done, and now they can see a tangible proof of that statement that I have the skills to be a program manager. So they give me a shot to move into that role, right? So you don't see it right away. And, this is through introspection and also having lots of mentors. By the way, for mentoring, you can never have enough. If you have two, I ask that you double that by the end of this month, because you can never have enough. You could literally choose for somebody to be a mentor because you like the way they smile and how it's captivating, right? It sounds creepy, but it's true, because as long as it helps you influence and get the result you want, it's okay to ask the person to be your mentor in that case. But in any event, that is an example that I've used, and I've done that multiple times, even in my consulting gig, as I look into things. So one of my journey in the past couple of years as a consultant is to be a recognized expert in business model innovation. And as such, I have been doing a lot of writing a lot of articles about that content creation. So that content is going to be approved that Mohammed know what he's talking about in there. And for Dell, I can also still write that. So I keep moving from role to role based on my aspiration. And some more time than not, a role has been created to fit me because I represented it well. So that is I think those are the two best examples that I could come up with.
That's a good chance for people to ask some last questions. You can even direct it to a particular person.
And as you're thinking about those questions, please come off mute. But one thing that I would like to say, Alan mentioned a new source. I'm going to speak for myself, and hopefully my colleague on the panel could agree with that. I am here as a resource, and I want you to think of me as a resource. At any point in time, send me a text, email, or even find me on LinkedIn, send me a note. I might not be as responsive as a 2-second text message reply, but I will respond, and I will give you my calendar to put the time on my calendar.
Yeah, no, definitely, Mohammed. It's great call. I think, myself as well, I think, we see a lot of the panelists also nodding. If Michelle has our contact information. I think we can probably send that out in some way, but definitely feel free to reach out. One of the reasons why we came onto the panels, we're obviously passionate about the topics that we discussed today, but we're really here because we do want to be able to help, you in terms, in the Northeastern community in terms of any way, we can to help further your career aspirations.
Anything from the panel that you'd like to put out there or as other lessons learned or advice or things you didn't get to say that you want to add?
Keep showing up.
I would like to also
I see
add
Megana came on camera. I'm thinking she might have something to say. Let's give her a chance to. If you didn't, you in trouble now.
I can still share my voice. No, I just came online because I was done with dinner, but I am very much enjoying the nuggets that I'm getting and I'm taking it all in. Thank you.
And also to echo what Rachel mentioned with the book, reach out, try and open up even to people in the company, even to people that are in similar positions and you don't even know them. Just send that message. Worst thing that will happen is they won't respond, but at least you did try, you did push yourself to actually reach out to just a person. And a lot of the times, and that's also the purpose of this meeting, it's always great to have this meeting, too many meetings lately, this panel right now is to actually have that discussion open-ended with people that are in kind of like a similar range of positions and similar years out of school. And a lot of the times, if let's say you're in a company that everyone is much more senior or everyone is much younger or in different levels, you feel that you don't have someone to talk to. And it's always nice to actually reach out to other people that maybe they've gone through something similar.
And people love to help.
Yes,
Yeah.
like that would be my 2 cents. Like actually, please try and reach out.
Yeah, so the support system is key, but I think it's also, important to, know what know your worth. I used to have a director that I worked for who encouraged us to actually job hunt in the office just to know what is your skill set worth and make sure that you're actually valued at, what the market, believes, you are worth. So, kind of going back to what Rachel was saying with imposter syndrome, it's like, it's so important to know what your assets are, and that's where your support system can help with as well. And, and then the flip side of, everything truly does work out for a reason. It's great that everyone showed up today, right? But, searching for a new job, doing like a lateral move or, looking at advancement, it's not an easy thing to do. Unfortunately, part of the process sometimes comes with rejection and, take the time to process it. But, everything truly does work out for a reason of, not getting, X opportunity may open up Y opportunity that's, 100 times better. So, it's really hard sometimes when you're going through, the process of, getting demotivated when that happens. But, it's okay that happens, and you need to, know it truly is going to work on trust the process, because at the end of the day, everything will work out. It's just maybe harder to realize in the moment.
And I know we are out of time, but I'm still going to say this because I think it's important. There's been a lot of layoff lately, and I've experienced layoff once in my professional career, and honest to God, it was the best thing that happened to me. And when I say that, I'm saying that, first of all, if you are in that role or in that position where you feel like you're laid off, it's hard for you to see it right now. But when you talk about it, say you are in an interesting position and you are exploring it, it could become the best thing. And when you say it like that, you keep looking for the good in that situation, or that you might call a predicament. It might not necessarily be a predicament right now, but just keep that positive attitude. Know that it's going to work out. I'm saying this not from reading. I'm saying this as somebody who's been laid off and doing all the time. First of all, I never went hungry. I'm grateful for that. I never was unable to pay my bill, and I ended up getting a job that's 10 times better than what I had. Right? So keep that attitude. If you are impacted by that workforce reduction, which is a really fancy term for layoff, keep smiling and keep striving.
I really appreciate the combination of positivity and encouragement that our lovely panel has put out there, but also their combined powerhouse of experience and knowledge. And I appreciate Alan, Lucy, Alki, Rachel, and Mohammed for their willingness to come together tonight. We did some planning together and to share all that they've learned and to bring this diversity of experience together. And thank you to those who joined us for the great questions. And speaking of layoffs, I am going to be offering a workshop if you are anticipating dealing with a layoff, or if you currently are, or you just want to know more. It's going to be on February 23rd. It'll be in our Husky Headlines email. So that's something coming up. But thank you again, everyone, and especially our accomplished and helpful panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.